first step of this problem is to figure out which side is more complex. In this equation, the side that is the most complex to solve is the left side, so you would solve that side first. So the side of the problem you will solve is sine x parentheses cosine x minus sine x. The next step of this problem is to distribute. You would multiply sine x times cosecant x and sine x times sine x. And you will end up with sine x multiplied by cosecant x. Subtract sine squared x. After you distribute the problem, when you look at your reciprocal identities, you would notice that you can shorten the reciprocals. So you will replace cosecant x with 1 over sine x. After you shorten the reciprocal, sine x and sine x would cancel each other out, and you will end up with 1 minus sine squared x. To finish the problem, you will notice that sine squared x is equal to cosine squared x by looking at your Pythagorean identities. Here's the next problem. We need the left side of the problem to equal the right side of the problem. And you will also notice that the right side of the problem is more complicated than the left side, so you will start working on that side first. Take a look at your Pythagorean theories and you will notice that 1 minus cosine x is equal to sine squared x. So then you would change 1 minus cosine x to sine squared x. Sine over cosine is a part of the quotient identity, which means sine squared x over cosine x is a part of the quotient identity also, which will make it tan multiplied by sine x, and you will verify the identity. And now we're moving on to the next problem, which is sine x parentheses cosine x plus secant x equals secant squared x. The left side of this problem is the most complicated, so we'll start on that side first, which is sine x multiplied by cosecant x plus sine x multiplied by secant x. Next, you would use the reciprocal identities to find the reciprocal of cosecant and secant, which is 1 over sine and 1 over cosine. After you find the reciprocals, you would simplify and get cosine x over cosine x plus sine x over cosine x1 plus sine x over cosine x. After you simplify, you will find the reciprocal. You will look at your reciprocal identities and realize that 1 over cosine is equal to secant, and you will get 1 over cosine squared x equals secant squared x. Next, you will look at your reciprocal identities and realize that 1 over cosine is equal to secant, and you will get secant squared x is equal to secant squared x, and you will verify the identity. Here's the last problem, which is tan x parentheses cotangent x plus tan x equals secant squared x. The left side of the problem is the most complex, so you will start with that side first. The next step is to cancel the tangents. You will cancel the first tangent outside the parentheses and the first tangent inside the parentheses, and you will get 1 plus tan squared x. The next step of the problem is to look at your quotient identities, and you will notice that tan is equal to sine over cosine, so then you will get 1 plus sine squared x over cosine squared x. You will make the equations equivalent to each other, so you will get cosine squared x over cosine squared x plus sine squared x over cosine squared x. Lastly, you would look at your reciprocal identities and realize that secant is equal to 1 over cosine. So 1 over cosine squared x is equal to secant squared x. And this was Verifying Trigonometric Identities by Samantha Love, Lauren Smith, Victoria Vorsane, and Dak Lawler.
Created using Powtoon.